Jazz in My Living Room, Episode 4, where I bring musicians into my home to accompany me and then tell you about the song and the songwriter. I was thinking that we're all born to create, with that urge to express ourselves in our own unique ways. Creativity is our birthright. What we do with it is our choice, and some people do it through their cooking or their sculpting or music or writing. Some just plan a good family reunion. It doesn't really matter. It's not about being an artist, but it's a basic human need. In the words of Antonio Carlos Jobim, one of the most important songwriters of the 20th century, he says, "Creation is an act of love, something that communicates with all of humanity." As an impassioned environmentalist and lover of nature, many of his songs express the beauty of the mountains and the ocean and the animal life all around him. Antonio Carlos Brasileiro de Almeida Jobim, also referred to as Tom for short, was born in 1927 in the Tijuca section of Rio de Janeiro. His family moved to the Ipanema district, where he grew up surrounded by lush forests, which stretched down to the warm waters of the Atlantic. "I believe I learned my songs from the birds of the Brazilian forest," he once said. He inherited verbal skills from his father, a diplomat who wrote poetry and died when Jobim was only 8. It was his stepfather who saw to it that the 12-year-old youngster applied himself to music. Jobim became proficient on the piano and also on the guitar and the harmonica. Jobim grew up listening to samba, which was a style of music originating in the Afro-Brazilian shanty towns of Rio and other cities. Later, he would come under the influence of the French Impressionists, Debussy and Ravel, as well as the cool jazz of American artists like Miles Davis and Gil Evans. And all of these influences would come together in Jobim's own compositions. He originally planned to study architecture, but he quit after 1 year and began working as a nightclub pianist in small clubs known as inferninhos, or infernos, around Rio. By the early 1950s, his ability to write out popular melodies by ear earned him work as a copyist for radio and recording studios, and he also served as a pianist on numerous recordings. In 1949, he married his first wife, Teresa Hermani. They raised a son, Paulo, who's also an accomplished musician, and a daughter, Elizabeth. Bossa Nova, or New Beat, was the new wave in Brazilian music. Derived from the samba, it had a cooler, more sophisticated sound, while still relying on the carnival-esque rhythms of its predecessor. Bossa Nova songs were characterized by their softness. The lyrics were simple, poetic, heartfelt, expressing a love for beautiful women, sun, and sea. Now, while Jobim wasn't the originator of this new sound, he actually credited João Gilberto with that distinction. He soon distinguished himself as its most sophisticated practitioner. His real breakthrough came through in 1956, when Vinicius de Moraes asked him to write music for the Black Orpheus. Now, that was a play which was transferring the myth of Orpheus and Eurydice to modern-day Rio. Well, the film became a huge hit, and Jobim's score kicked off a new musical craze that quickly spread throughout and beyond Brazil. The Bossa Nova phenomenon reached the U.S. as saxophonist Stan Getz and Charlie Byrd recorded their successful jazz samba album. And in November of 1962, Jobim and other Brazilian musicians performed a big Bossa Nova concert at New York's Carnegie Hall. The concert initially seemed to be a flop as critics panned the show. Brazilians also criticized it because they thought the music was being diluted by singing the songs in English. But nevertheless, the concert succeeded in exposing Jobim to American musicians and all the industry figures. He recognized the importance of American exposure to broaden the reach of his music, and he often said that if he'd remained in Brazil, he would still just be drinking beer in Rio's corner bars. He released several albums in the early mid-60s in the U.S. jazz vein and collaborated with Frank Sinatra on an album that was popular for 40 years. As a composer and lyricist, Jobim had a fascination with nature and romantic love. In 1962, Jobim composed a song that was soon to become a worldwide phenomenon, The Girl from Ipanema. It was written as Jobim and Moraes were sitting at a table in a bar in Ipanema, and they became infatuated with the passerby, the tall and tan and young and lovely woman described in the song. It was based on a 17-year-old girl whose name was Helo Pinero. She would take daily trips to the Velosa bars and cafes to buy cigarettes for her mother, and often left to an orchestra of whistles. The song transformed Eloisa into a celebrity, and she's considered one of the muses of bossa nova. With a vocal by Gilberto's wife Astrid and a verse of English lyrics, the song became a #2 hit in the US in 1964, eclipsed only by the Beatles' A Hard Day's Night. Jobim prospered, although he was never canny about the music publishing deals he signed, and very often he failed to receive a proper share of the money his songs earned. Jobim's music remained consistently successful through much of the 1960s. Nothing else became quite a hit as The Girl from Ipanema, but songs such as The Wave, Insensitive, and Meditation with vocals by Jobim himself, Astrid Gilberto, or other singers became part of the record collections of many sophisticates and were internalized by jazz musicians as quickly as they appeared. Jobim's popularity dipped in the 70s as bossa nova finally ran out of steam commercially, but he never slowed down creatively. In 1976, Jobim met 19-year-old photographer Ana Beatriz Lantra. The pair had a son, João Francisco, in 1979. They got married in 86, and then in 87 had a daughter, Maria Luisa Helena. In the late 70s, Jobim was really working mostly in soundtracks for films, but he did assemble a band called the New Band with his son Paulo on guitar, and he began touring once again. He toured in the mid-80s and were in venues like Carnegie Hall and Avery Fisher Hall in New York, Constitution Hall in Washington. By this time, critics recognized Jobim as a living legend, and he received various awards of national and international scope in the last years of his life. He was inducted into the Songwriters Hall of Fame in 1991. Jobim never rested on his laurels, and he entered the mid-90s with a full plate of creative projects. With these career capstones in the works, it became quite a shock for Jobim's admirers in both the US and Brazil when he died suddenly of heart failure at New York's Mount Sinai Hospital on December 8th of 1994, where he was being treated for bladder cancer. Jobim's body was returned to Brazil, where a funeral parade held in his honor in Rio de Janeiro lasted for 4 hours, and he was buried in a tomb near that of Vinicius de Moraes. I decided to sing the song Dindi. Jobim wrote this song in 1958, and he was inspired by the rain and a wide pasture in an area called Jirinji, situated on the road close to his family's cottage. He wrote it for the singer Sylvia Tellez, who was killed in a car accident shortly after she recorded it in 1959. His friend Aloysio de Oliveira wrote the lyrics, and Ray Gilbert wrote the English lyric. Dindi was the first Jobim song that I learned, and I just fell in love with it. This put me on a quest, like most jazz singers I know, to listen and learn as many Jobim songs as I could. So please enjoy Dindi, featuring Tom Snow on piano and Tom Bucci on the bass. Sky so vast is the sky, with faraway clouds just wandering by. Where do they go? Oh, I don't know. I don't know. Wind that speaks to the leaves with me, oh my Gingy, oh Gingy, like the song in the wind in the trees, that's how my heart is singing, Gingy, when you're with me, happy Gingy. Yes, I do. Yes, I do. I'll let you go away if you take me with you. Don't you know, Gingy, I've been running and searching for you like a river that can't find the sea. That would be me without you, Gingy. Tom Bucci on the bass. I love you more each day. Yes, I do. Yes, I do. I'll let you go away if you take me with you. Don't you know, Gingy, I've been running and searching for you like a river that can't find the sea. That would be me without you, Gingy. Oh, Gingy, Gingy, Gingy. Thank you so much for tuning in to Jazz in My Living Room. If you like what you see, please share it. And join me the next time. See you soon.
Better than cream cheese and bagels, better than honey on bread, better than champagne and pretzels, better than breakfast in bed, better than chili rellenos, better than chocolate eclairs, better than hothouse tomatoes, better than fresh Bartlett pears, better than dining a la carte or sampling gastronomic art, better than anything except being a